Welcome to Priya, or otherwise known as Patty Reviews Everything, where I just review stuff that I want to talk about. And I just got back from the movie theaters watching Aquaman, and I'm going to give my review on Aquaman. Spoiler free, so don't worry about that. I will talk about some things in detail, but I'll be kind of explaining them vaguely, just so people who haven't seen the movie yet, can still go experience it and, see if they like the movie or not. This movie was better than I expected, but to rephrase that, it wasn't that great either, if that makes sense. So I went to this movie thinking it was gonna be like Batman v Superman, just like dog shit. And then, the movie ended up being okay. But okay doesn't mean it's a great movie. It's just kind of okay, right? I'm gonna talk about things that I did enjoy, and I'll go talk about a rough summary of the plot, and then we'll talk about things that I didn't like. So, things that were good, Jason Momoa as Aquaman was good. I like the way he portrays Aquaman. I thought he did a fine job. Obviously, he was okay in Justice League, but you get to see him more in this movie, obviously. I think he does well. There are some times where, he would throw a joke that just wouldn't land, but, that's more of a script issue, not necessarily the way Jason Momoa, delivers a joke. It's just weird. It's a tone difference, but Amber Heard as Mara was really good. She helped push the plot along. Her powers are a little overpowered. I'll get into that in a little bit. But she wasn't like a Lois Lane. She wasn't there to be stupid, or she wasn't like the Emma Stone of Amazing Spider-Man. She actually had kind of a purpose. Granted, she has superpowers, the other ones didn't, but you know what I'm saying. She actually kind of held her own, kind of helped with everything, had a good couple scenes. Patrick Wilson as Ocean Master, Aquaman's, brother to Atlantis. He did fine. He was, I wouldn't say generic, but he was trying to be cynical, but didn't come off super cynical, if that makes sense. He got stuff done, which I respect that as a villain, but he wasn't all that intimidating, if that makes sense. So for example, I give him praise for getting shit done because he did more than Steppenwolf, and Steppenwolf was garbage in Justice League. He wasn't that intimidating, but villains that are intimidating, I guess Steppenwolf was more intimidating looking than, Patrick Wilson, but it's a weird balance you have to take. It's kind of like I don't want to make this as a trope or whatever, but Dark Knight Rises, you have Bane, who got things done, but was also very intimidating on screen, if that makes sense. They had a good presence and instincted the fact that they were evil, fear, so on. And this person was kind of I was just yeah, you're a bad guy, but nah. Everyone else I thought did a fine job acting, minus Nicole Kidman. I think her role as Atlantis, the queen, her acting was kind of subpar. There's a couple scenes where I think her reactions or whatever weren't that great. But there was an action sequence that she was in that was really good, or it could have been a stunt double or whatever, but it was portraying her that was really nice. But her acting one-on-one I thought was kind of okay. Going on to action sequences, I think this movie has a really good job with a lot of hand-to-hand combat action sequences, minus the CGI fights, because obviously CGI fights I think are a little bit easier to direct because it's all CGI, so you get to kind of depict where you want things to be placed because you're the one animating and creating. But with hand-to-hand combat, there was no shaky cam. And there weren't that many cuts. It wasn't 8 cuts to do one sequence, or as much as I like the action hand-to-hand combat in Marvel movies or whatever, there are a lot of times where there's a lot of cuts and a lot of shaking cam, shaky cam from action scenes. I understand shaky cam could work because it allows it intenses it because you're kind of the camera's moving around, but there's sometimes where it's they use that to cover up flaws that could be seen unless it wasn't shaking. So it's kind of like a magician. A magician can do a trick with cards out of his sleeve, but you need a longer sleeve to hide the flaw. That's what shaky cam is, weird metaphor, but you know what I'm saying. Minus the CGI fights, like I said, the live action fights were done very well. I do give praise to whoever was the choreographer to that. They were very, very brutal. A lot of people died. There was times where Aquaman was fighting someone, and when he beat up this person, I was that person's fucking dead. It was kind of like that scene in Batman v Superman when Batman comes into the warehouse and just fucks everyone up. Those people died, and same here. But I liked it. It was very raw. I think the movie aesthetically, I think it looks very, very beautiful. The CGI was done very well, minus some scenes. There's a flashback to a scene where William Dafoe's in the movie, or even with the dad to Aquaman. What's his name? Tomorrow Morrison or something like that. Where they had to CGI them kind of a little bit younger to get rid of wrinkles and whatnot. And for the most part, it looked good, but they would have it next to a real face, and you could kind of see the difference. So when it was just them on camera, you're like, okay, like that, whatever. You can't really base it off anything else because, you know, a camera could look a certain way or lighting could look a certain way. But then when you had a younger face to like a younger actor version of like Aquaman, who's just like an actual like teenager or whatever, and they got like the camera shot would show both of them. You could then start to depict like the differences of way. You could depict like what was real and what wasn't. You know, it wasn't like super obvious, but it was like things that I noticed. But either than that, I think the lighting, the aesthetic of the movie was done very well. I think they showed a very good way of like showing how massive the ocean is by kind of like putting everything in sections of like the different seas, like the northern sea, southern sea, you know, whatever. The civilization that they had was very nice. It kind of reminded me of Thor, if that makes sense. Like when you go to like Asgard, and there's like the entire like bridge to like the whole city. It was kind of like that with Atlantis. They did a good job showing off the civilization that they lived in, but not making it too realistic, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of like high-tech stuff, and obviously CGI with that's gonna make it less immersive. So like you can't really hold it to that like high, like, oh, CGI therefore not real. Like obviously you have to kind of like let some stuff slide because you have to let, like, that's how a lot of these movies are made. But we'll kind of talk about things that I didn't like. This movie has a lot of fucking title screens telling you where they are because they keep going places over and over and over. Like, I don't know the span of this movie. Like, I don't know the time frame of how many days pass within this movie, if not any. I'm not really quite sure. But a lot happens and they're jumping around like a lot, and it's a big pit stop movie. Like a pit stop movie, as much as I love the movie Interstellar, it's ultimately still just a pit stop movie. They go somewhere, something happens, they move on, something happens, they move on, something happens, but they keep changing locations. And I get like they were trying to go after something, and like to go after they had to find it, and clues led to more clues, but that kind of ruins pacing because you're then just kind of lengthening the movie out, and the movie's over 2 hours long. You're kind of pushing the movie out longer than it needed to be, because instead of just going point A to point C or D, you have to go point A, B, C, D. But like B and C, nothing really happened. It was B and C, they found another clue and some shenanigans happened, like something caused like complications of B and C, but they still get the D anyways. So you could just have them go to A to D and shit happen at D and the same thing happens. Like it would be the same exact story. It's just you're just lengthening the film by going to other places solely just to go to other places, if that makes sense. Black Manta in this movie, I don't think Black Manta honestly needed to be in this film like at all. He's really not in this film like much. And it's kind of an origin story of Black Manta, so the whole scene where Black Manta becomes like, when Black Manta becomes Black Manta, I thought was good. I thought it was enough reason to become Black Manta, to want to be like this person. Like they gave a decent fuel to the fire, but the way that Black Manta makes the suit and carries himself, I wasn't 100% a fan with. And then eventually he's just not in the film much after that. Honestly, I feel like Black Manta could have been his own villain in a whole nother movie, because this movie was really about Aquaman kind of finding himself and accepting himself and becoming king, and like challenging the throne to prove that he's king, like most like Renaissance-ish films. So I don't think Black Manta was necessarily needed, because he could have done that after Aquaman already became Aquaman, right? I don't know, it was a subplot. It kind of just felt like a side mission that you didn't really beat in order to beat the main game, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just don't think Black Manta was needed in that film. I liked him, but I just like there wasn't enough of him, and like it was just kind of like, oh, okay, like all right, on to the actual plot again. Like that, you know, it was weird. The overall climax of everything, minus a lot of CGI, I thought was fine. Like it, you know, there's a lot of cliches in this film that I just wasn't a big fan of either. Like there's the cliche of like, oh, like, you know, like fucking Aquaman and, you know, Mera are gonna go on this adventure, and eventually they're gonna start liking each other, because they don't really like each other at first. Like, they don't really care for each other at first, but eventually they start liking each other. Then they start, you know, they fall in love, and then, like, that was a thing. And then, like, you know, fucking National Treasure cliche where this clue leads to this clue, which leads to this clue, and they have, like, eureka moments, which then leads to this clue, and it's like, that sucks for pacing. It's stupid. National Treasures aren't even good movies to begin with. So, like, that whole, like, eureka, like, oh, what does the riddle mean kind of cliche is stupid. Just like, and then there's a lot of convenient things that happen for convenience, like the way how Nicole Kidman, like, Atlanta and Aquaman's dad meet is very coincidental. It's very convenient. A lot of things happen because it's very convenient, like the way they get out of, like, trouble or, like, suspense, or the way that the plot kind of pushes is very convenient. There's a part where they get to a location that doesn't really make any sense. Like, it was a stretch even for a movie about a man who breathes underwater and controls animals. Was a fucking stretch. It just didn't make sense, like, at all. Like I'll accept a civilization underwater and people, like, being half fucking fish and human, and then they get to a place where, like, they need the thing that'll eventually allow him to become, like, king of the throne. That was a stretch to me, and I was like, what? Why is that there? Out of all places, why? You could have done the same exact thing, but just in a more realistic setting. And like I said, I'm trying to be spoiler free, but there was some turns that I just did not get. Like, I just feel like they could have portrayed it better, but they were kind of going for the whole visually whooshy effect. I know Zack Snyder produced this film, and obviously, like, if you're a producer, you tend to have more say over the directors. That's why they tend to make director cuts of different films, and those director cuts tend to be better, but producers tend to have the overall say. And I know Zack Snyder is a very good visual director, so he likes things that are very pretty, and the place that they went to is very pretty, but it just didn't really make logical sense why they were there, if that makes sense. Other than that, like I said, it's a tale of understanding and becoming an acceptance of who you are. Very good action scenes, very good camera work, visually pleasing. Tropes, issues I would have with the film would be pacing, pit stops, cliches, character usage of the villain, and also, I don't know, it's weird to say, like, I thought this movie would be absolute garbage, but it's not. But it's not amazing either. Like, this film's like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. It's not like super amazing, but it did a lot better, and there's a lot of things that are charming about this film. So I would give it that. Would I recommend it? If you're not a fan of the DC universe, then I would say maybe not, probably not your thing. If you don't like it, then you're probably not gonna like this one either. But if you like all movies, then you'll probably enjoy this, because a lot of the things that I pointed out you probably don't even notice as is, because a lot of people tend to just digest movies as they are. It was an okay film. Like I said, I'm trying to keep the spoiler free. It's hard to explain it, and I'm trying to keep the pacing relatively okay with explaining this film. But I think that's my review. Aquaman, it was okay. That's Aquaman. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. And if you haven't seen it yet, then hopefully this helps you if you want to go see it or not. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you smash the like button. Definitely check out links in the description down below, such as my Twitter, my Twitch, my merchandise, if you're into that. And with that being said, I will catch you guys later in another video. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. You guys know me as PattyTrills. I'm out. A yoga.